Today, let's discuss the correlation coefficient R. The correlation coefficient tells us the strength and direction of a linear relationship. The correlation coefficient R ranges in value from -1 to 1. If we think about a number line, we'll put 0 in the center, -1 on the left, +1 on the right. If values of R are close to 0, we say that those values represent a weak correlation. If the values of R are close to -1 or 1, we say those values represent a strong correlation. And last but not least, if the values are somewhere between 0 and -1, 0 and 1, just kind of in the middle, we say those values represent a moderate correlation. Now let's put a visual in terms of a scatter plot to this number line. Down below, you can see that when the correlation coefficient is 0, looking at the scatter plot, if we circle all of these points, notice we end up with a circle. We don't really see an upward or downward trend in the points. The points are just all kind of scattered on the scatter plot. Now if we look to 0.5 and -0.5, and we draw a circle around those points, notice that our circle now looks more like an oval. And you can also tell that there is a positive trend at 0.5 and a negative trend at -0.5. As our values of R get further away from 0, so 0.9, 1, -0.9, and -1, notice that our circle around our points becomes an even narrower oval. Notice again that you can identify either a positive or a negative trend in the data set. So when we talk about the strength of a linear relationship, we can use the words weak, moderate, or strong to describe the strength of the relationship. If the absolute value of R is greater than 0, but less than 0.4, we would describe that as a weak relationship. If the absolute value of R is greater than or equal to 0.4 or less than or equal to 0.7, we would describe that as a moderate correlation. And last but not least, if the absolute value of R is greater than 0.7 but less than 1, we would describe that as a strong correlation. If R is equal to 0, we say there is no correlation. And if R is equal to positive or -1, we say that the correlation or the relationship is exactly linear. Okay, let's look at an example of how we might apply correlation coefficient to various types of questions. So looking at these 3 questions, we are given 3 scatter plots, and we are asked which of the following could be the correlation coefficient for the scatter plot. The first thing we want to do is we want to take our pencil and we want to draw a circle around those points. Do we see a trend in either the positive or negative direction? In this case, we do. We definitely see a positive trend. So looking at my answer choices, I can cross off the two R values that are negative. I can also cross off the R value, E, which is 1. And the reason I can cross that off is because these points are not exactly linear. Now we're left with two possible options, 0.7 and 0.1. So let's think back. As the values of R get closer to 0, when we circle our points, we end up with a circle. As the values of R get further away from 0, our circle looks more like an oval. In this case, I would say that when I circle my points, I definitely seem to have more of an oval. So I'm going to go with option B as the correct answer. In number 2, let's go ahead, let's circle our points. Okay, when we circle our points, you can see right away that it's really challenging to see an upward or downward trend. In this example, I'm going to cross off all the values that it would imply a positive or negative trend, and I'm going to choose 0 as the correct answer. Last but not least, in number 3, go ahead and lasso those points. You can see a clear downward or negative trend. Looking at the possible answer choices, I'm going to cross off the positive values. I'm also going to cross off -1 because that relationship is not exactly linear. Now we have -0.3 and -0.8. -0.3 is closer to 0. -0.8 is closer to 1. So when I look at the lasso that I drew around my points, am I closer to a circle or an oval? I'm definitely closer to an oval here, so I'm going to choose -0.8.